In this video, we're going to talk about a hair transplant design technique developed here at Samson Hair Restoration called the Quadrian Hairline Technique. This is a technique that we think results in the finest, the most natural transplants that can be done anywhere in the world. And this technique was developed because of the deficiencies that we saw in transplants at the time of our founding. We saw lots of transplants and they didn't look natural. And so we said, how do we make them natural? We spent about 5 years of intensive, focused study to come up with this technique. And it's called the Quadrian Hairline Technique because the hairline's the most important part of a transplant to get natural. After all, it's what everybody sees first. You look at somebody, you scan their face, you see the hairline. If that hairline looks natural, you just move on. If that hairline causes someone to stop and pause and look at it, it's noticeable and it looks unnatural. Now, through this 5-year study, we really identified 4 key variables: location, shape, texture, and composition. And we found if you get those 4 variables right, it's almost impossible to screw up a transplant. But ignore even one of those, and that whole transplant may or may not work. We had a couple of insights also through this study, and one of those insights was that natural hairlines appear to be more regular and uniform than they are. You look at a hairline, and if you look at it up close, you're going to see a surprising amount of waves or undulations or divots to it. Okay? And both the amplitude and frequency of that wave varies greatly along the front. A further insight was that hairlines are not patterns. Patterns are the enemy. If you produce a pattern, people see it. Our brains are fantastic at pattern recognition. So the whole point of a hair transplant in designing the hairline is to create the absence of a pattern, randomness. Now think about this. Randomness is hard. Humans seek order. In trying to create disorder in a hairline, it goes against our very nature. And that's what has made these transplanted hairlines look so bad for so long. Now take this first example of a patient who had a hair transplant with a traditional technique. This is not a Samson technique, this is not the Quadrian technique. Notice that the hairline is very uniform. There's very little variation, there's no amplitude, there's no frequency, there's no disorder. It's just a nice smooth semicircle on a person's forehead. And that should look unnatural to you. It should call attention to itself. Compare that to this hairline that's been transplanted using Samson's Quadrian technique. Notice that there's no line. Notice the degree of variation along the front, the jaggedness, the unevenness. This hairline isn't a line at all. It's just a natural transition from the bald skin of the forehead to normal density behind it. It looks natural, and that's the point. A hairline shouldn't look transplanted at all. It should look completely natural. We at Samson are experts in hairline technique. Samson's Quadrian hairline produces completely natural results. And this is a technique that's not available elsewhere. It's only available here at Samson. We don't share it with the competition, and we think it makes all the difference in the world, because if you're going to have a hair transplant, the hairline has to be perfect.